All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not complete, let's just make sure that you finish that for me today so we get that sent in. So today we want to continue to talk about Bahamian folk tales. Um, One of the things that we did last class was we engaged with an evening in Guanima. We started those stories. And we began by identifying at least the first few stories and analyzing them in the context, but also thinking about them in terms of what they may mean today. One of the things that we talked about was the idea that, given where we are today, the stories may seem somewhat different or may mean different things. And a lot of them are stuck in sort of a time period as well. And so we want to think about that, and we want to think about the importance of those stories given when they were created and the audience that they were speaking to at that particular time. One of the things that we did with Travolta Cooper and Bodine, they talked a little bit about how they bring some of the ideas and the themes from those folk tales to the modern times and use it within their current work. And so today, we are actually going to hear from another creative who also engages in the folk tale tradition within Bahamian oral tradition. And so let me introduce our guest speaker. Our guest speaker today is Princess Pratt. She's a modern day cultural Renaissance woman and griot with Bahamian, Jamaican, and Barbadian roots. She's a multicultural, multifaceted, autodidactic. She is a drummer, a dancer, and a multidimensional artist. She is founder of Sensually, Spiritually, Culturally Me. She's an entrancing storyteller, poet, writer. Princess brings her stories to life. She is a producer, event coordinator, and dancer, percussionist, and sole female drummer performer in the group Ubuntu. She considers herself a real-life island magical princess who creates culturally relevant entertainment for Bahamian youth with her children's storytelling, creative play, and edutainment brand, The Princess and the Books. She credits all of her abilities to the nurturing she received being raised in a rich, multicultural, literary, musically, and creative family environment. So let us welcome Princess to the class. She will talk to us a little bit about, well, I'll let you, she's good at talking, so I'll let her talk and say what she's gonna do and talk to us a little bit about what she does and how she does it.
Greetings, everybody. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. I'm so delighted to be able to share my folktale magic and my background with this class today. And ironically enough, when this meeting started, I heard Craig playing some nice Gombe Bahamian music in the background. And I was actually here doing the same thing, listening to some George Simonet, because as I was preparing for this class, I was engaged in a form of storytelling on my porch. So I'll start off by saying that I came up in a rich cultural family. Where I actually live now, I live off of Wolf Road, across from Columbus Primary, in the heart of like folktale Nassau. And so I grew up through this corner with my grandmother, hearing about folk tales, hearing about a character by the name of Big Belly George who used to eat children. And how ironic that I'm actually back in the same space where Big Belly George existed, just to tap into all of that magic. But what actually got me started in storytelling was, I guess I always had the ability to read, and to read with emphasis and enthusiastically. And my teachers in my primary school at Gerald Cash Primary, they encouraged me to do choral speaking. It was something new to me as I had just transferred to Gerald Cash Primary from Princeville. So that was like, it was a cultural shock, but at the same time, a cultural rebirth for me, because in my private school curriculum, I didn't have the exposure to Bahamian culture and Bahamian folk tales. And when I went to Gerald Cash, I was introduced to choral speaking. I remember my guidance counselor, Miss McDonald, she used to take all of us on the lawn and read Babuki and Barabi stories to us. And so that would have been my first introduction to all of that. And I remember thinking, I want to do that. Like, how I could do that? How do I get into that? And so I started doing choral speaking, and I actually competed in the National Arts Festival before. I won a distinction, and it just stuck with me. And as I became older, as I became an adult, and I became a part of Ubuntu, and we're a cultural organization, and we do drumming and dance, and I'm like, the only thing missing is storytelling. And I didn't have any of those influences around me at the time. Growing up, of course, there was Kayla Lockhart's Edwards, and then later on down, I got introduced to Portia Smith and Patricia Clinton Maycolas. But my all-time inspiration has actually been Miss Lou from Jamaica, because I'm of Jamaican heritage and I grew up watching her on TV, and I say I can do that one day. And I did it. And in exploring Bahamian folklore and folk tales, I understand why they were used back then in the fabric of that time. Um, most storytelling were actually used to nurture and sustain a culture's social and moral identity, as well as storytelling was a part of healing for the overall human psyche. Stories, they enhance empathy, they they engage more of your acute memory and motor skills, they enable you to think critically, and of course tap into your imagination. Now, here in the Bahamas, of course, most of our stories, they were used to teach a particular lesson. They were used as a moral compass. And of course, here in the Bahamas, we colorful, we expressive. So most of our stories includes, anecdotes or analogies from something that happened to somebody from way back when. But usually what people do is they use that experience and just continue to tailor it to their own. And so I try to do that when I write my stories. I try to tap into all of the mythological characters that we have that I know about. And what I don't know, I go into my imagination and I make my own, you know. What I find challenging for me though is because I have the knack to speak Bahamian dialect, or what we know as, or what I found out was a language called Cockney. Now, we usually only call it Bahamian dialect, but back in the 1800s, it was actually documented as a language called Cockney, right? And so I am trying to use more of my Cockney in my writing, because we've been conditioned to speak the Queen's English so much. And I remember when I first started on my poetry journey, a Jamaican poet said to me, Bahamians, I think that they are ashamed of their language. And I asked him why, and he said, because you hardly ever hear dialect being used in a professional sense, especially in poetry. You guys, you speak the Queen's English so decently. And in Jamaica or anywhere you go in the world, you can know a Jamaican is a Jamaican because some part of their slang is going to come out. And he told me that he feels that there is some fear with us in speaking our slang, and that always stuck with me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to try my best to speak more in Bahamian slang, because it is our culture, it is our mother tongue. And if we don't use it enough, of course, we're going to lose it, and we're going to lose parts of our identity. So that's my challenge, trying to incorporate more of the Concockney language inside of my stories. I'm open to any questions anybody may have. If not, I actually have an original story that I actually wrote for St. Anne's that I'd like to share with you all, if that's fine.
Hey, can I ask, Princess? You talked about your heroes. Before you mentioned Miss Lou, you mentioned some Bahamians. Why
Okay.
those? But why those Bahamians in particular? Can you tell us a little bit about who they are and how they became your inspiration?
Okay, well, Kayla Lockhart Edwards. Um, she was a prolific Bahamian storyteller. I think she is credited with, is it the All We Is One Family song? I don't want to misquote myself, but I know she was huge in Bahamian culture. Now, for me, Kayla Lockhart Edwards was my first representation of a Bahamian storyteller. Before, I only knew of Miss Lou. I didn't know that Bahamians were actually storytellers. So, of course, when I saw her and just saw all of the culture that she embodied, I literally saw myself in her. And I said that this is something that I could do. And of course, she went on to do storytelling on TV. I used to watch her on TV on Saturday mornings. And she had a drummer just like I have a drummer, you know. Um, yeah, and so that was my inspiration. And then Portia Smith. Portia Smith, I think she goes by the Foxhill Storyteller. She started a Bahamian storytelling show, I think, on Cable 12. And I guess in modern culture, that was the first and only show of its kind. And what she did was she usually read stories either from An Evening in Guanima or Telling Tales by Telsine Turner and other Bahamian writers. She would bring their stories on. Not sure if any of the stories that she read were originally hers, but all of that was inspiration for me to even, you know, draw in from that to be my own storyteller. And in looking around, I'm the only one in my generation. Like, I think I'm the youngest storyteller because I'm in my 30s, you know, and I don't see anybody else in my generation doing it. And so it's an honor for me to carry on this rich legacy.
Thank you. Go on.
Yeah. All right.
And
So
you did mention Patricia Glinton McColdis as well, but
I did.
yeah,
I did.
we know who she is. We
Yes.
discussed her a little bit. So,
Okay.
but I'm glad you sort of unpacked those other two as well.
Yes. Okay. So let me go ahead and share this story with you all. And I try to switch up my bonde, my opening response. So the opening response of a Bahamian storytelling is called a bonde. So you open up with like a call and response, and then of course you introduce your characters and their family and their situation. There's always some sort of motif there in the storytelling, and there's always either a riddle or another call and response and a clap. And of course, in there you have all of your inanimate inanimate objects, your mythological figures. And then when the story ends, you end with a bunde again, which is a closing. So my bunde, I try to change them up. We know the old one was once upon a time was the good old time when the monkey chewed tobacco and he spit white line. So for this one, I said, once upon a time was a good old time when the monkey wanted switcher, but he had no line. Cock-a-doodle-doo. It was 6 a.m. on the enchanting Tamarind Isle when the second fowl crowed to wake Juju and Mango up for school. Today was a special day at school for Mango, and she awoke with much excitement to get ready early as she wanted to be the first person to arrive to her school. Her twin brother Juju, on the other hand, wasn't as excited and could be heard mumbling under his breath as he took his own slow time to get out of bed. Man, I ain't gotta be to school early. Why I gotta wake up so early? Why she can't walk to school by herself since she won't be the first one? Hmm. Just a couple of days before, Mango had won the title of class president, beating out two of her classmates, including her brother Juju. After she won, Mango declared that on Fun Day, she would throw the entire school a party and host a talent show, something unheard of in the history of the school and the island. You see, Tamarind Isle was a huge island filled with all kind of farm animals like cows, chickens, sheep, and pigs, and bounteous fruit trees grew everywhere, especially the tamarind from which the island got its name. The island was so beautiful. Every day the golden sun would dance on top of the deep blue waves as it washed upon the pink sand shore. Although the island's beauty was majestic, most of its inhabitants lived in fear of the Chick Charney woman who lived in the center of the island. For almost 100 years, she terrorized the people of the island, demanding that they pay her in fruits and meat every time they had to make a journey to either side of the island. The island was shaped like a diamond, and there was no getting around the Chick Charney woman, who lived in a wide circular home in the middle made of magic sea glass, allowing her to spy on everything and everyone. The adults on the island grew tired of always having to give away their food to the Chick Charney woman whenever they needed to venture out. So most of them just stopped going out. The only people that dared to venture out were the teachers, the school's children, and the school's principal. The schoolhouse was a tiny limestone structure on the southern tip of the island that used to be a church, with one big room serving as six separate classrooms, all separated by huge thatch palms. Each separate class or space had one table with six chairs, as there were only 5 students to each classroom. So the entire school body consisted of only 30 students. Most of these 30 students, including Mango, would have to wake up a few hours earlier than usual if they wanted to avoid giving away all of their lunch to this greedy Chick Charney woman. They would have to leave home at least an hour before the first fowl crowed if they didn't want to starve all day, because they couldn't learn much on empty growling stomachs. Back on the north side, Mango had just finished loading the second and the last croaker sack with all of the peanut cakes, benny cakes, flour cakes, and potato bread her mommy had made the night before. Come, Juju, man, stop slunking. We gotta go. You know, if that woman see us, she could take all these things and we ain't gonna have no party, she said to her brother, who was still taking his own slow time. Now, look here, Mango. You know, if that woman try fool with us, I gonna brace her in her head. Please don't do that, said Mango in a sad tone. She's still an old woman, and we still gotta respect our elders. Unlike her brother and most of the people on the island, who didn't care for and hated the Chick Charney woman because of the way she treated them and kept them living in fear, Mango always had a deep care for the old woman. She always felt sorry for her miserable ways and often wondered how she became so mean. She thought that maybe if the old woman had someone to care for her all this time, then perhaps she wouldn't have to be so mean, and the people of the island would be happy too. A long, scorching half hour had passed as Juju and Mango's sojourn to school was about to reach a critical point. They had managed to navigate through the dense, strathy, and rocky bushes around the island coast in order to avoid having to pass the Chick Charney woman's house. They had carefully plotted and mapped out their way through the bush for 3 mornings in a row, using old dried tamarinds as markers in case they were to get lost. Little did they know, the Chick Charney woman used to wander in the bushes early every morning to bathe in the blue hole, and she had spied the children the morning before and listened intently as they spoke of her plan to outsmart her. She laughed in her mind. Look at these little scrawny fool children think they smarter than me. Well, I get something good for them. As soon as Juju and Mango reached near to the blue hole and was about to pass it, The chick Charney woman flew out of the blue hole and landed right in front of them. Where you no pissy tail cheering tank you no girl? You ain't know I wink up in here before moustache. And you ain't get no moustache. So how you no think you gonna fool a old hen like me? I beg you, ma'am, please don't hide us. The onlyest thing we did want was to reach the school with all our food, exclaimed a very frightened but brave Mango. While Mango was trying to beg her way out of harm's way, Juju's eyes spotted one old conch shell near the blue hole and raced toward it. Juju, what you doing? Screamed Mango. And I tell you, I can brace this old ugly woman in her head. You mustn't think I joking, eh? I ain't care. Juju yucked the conch shell with a swiftness, and just as he was about to throw it, Mango leaped in front of the chick Charney woman and held her tight, shielding her from the conch shell that was about to leave a big camoli in her forehead. Mango, what you doing? Get out my way, shouted Juju. No, man, Juju, this ain't right. I mean, what she's doing to us ain't right either. But I can't let you harm this woman, Juju. I can't, but what can happen to her? Crying as tears streamed down her face onto the old woman's. Just then, something magical started to happen. The woman's old wrinkly skin started to glow as silver as the moon, and her hideous black wings disappeared and turned into a pair of hands. Mango fell back and both her and Juju watched in amazement as the scary old woman transformed into a beautiful young woman right before their very eyes. As her transformation was complete, she bent down to Mango in gratitude for being the only person in almost 100 years to show genuine care and concern for her. When she was just a little girl, as she was now, she was very mean and didn't care much for others. One day, a strange woman who was visiting the island met her as she was on her way home from picking some scarlet and hog plums, her favorite. The woman, who was missing an eye and looked very weak and frail, hadn't had anything to eat all day, and so she begged the little girl for a few of the plums. Miss, if you don't get your Jones and looking self from round me begging, said the girl to the woman, not caring about her well-being at all, or who she was and why she was hungry. Needless to say, the old woman cast a spell on the young girl and turned her into a chick Charney, telling her that the only way the spell would ever be broken, she would have to get somebody to genuinely care for her in her new monstrous state. And of course, everybody on the island would grow terrified of this new creature woman, so nobody cared for her or acted caring towards her. So she grew mean and made everybody's life a living hell until Mango came along. Mango was always curious about the old woman and always secretly cared for her, especially since she was so old and she had nobody to take care of her and nobody to talk to, not a single friend or loved one. Because of Mango's caring spirit and nature, she was able to break the curse that kept both the old woman and the island imprisoned for so long. Now, things could finally get back to normal on the island, and the adults of the island could be happy and mingle with each other again. And everybody could enjoy all the delicious food they once enjoyed without having to give most of it away. And Mango and Juju made it to school in one piece with their great big feast to eat and party the day away. Eban Boban, now my story has come to an end. And if you want to hear it again, make sure to tell all your friends. So that
Good job.
was my story.
That was really good.
Thank you. So just based on the story, can anybody just give a guess as to what the main theme was in the story?
Compassion.
Show compassion to
Compassion
others.
and caring, yes. So St. Anne's had a school assembly on compassion and caring. And so I decided to write a story centered around that because, you know, children learn from those kinds of examples, especially, you know, when it's animated and it's something that they can learn from. And what I tried to do in the story was I tried to incorporate old Bahamian sayings as well as new Bahamian sayings, because you know the language stay changing up. And so in order to captivate the minds of the children in this generation now, I have to speak in some of the slang that they know. So hence me saying, I gonna place you in your head, you know, and all that sort of slang.
And Jonesin.
And Jonesin, exactly.
Actually, that might be old. I don't, I'm that might be from our generation. I don't know if these kids know what Jonesin is.
Any questions?
I had a question, but you had already answered. I was asking, who's your audience? Like, who do you write for? You said you are on the porch reading stories.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually write for everybody. Um, I try not to put an age limit to my stories. So I write for everybody, but of course, in particular, I am trying to grasp the mind of the younger children, apart. So the primary school audience, especially, you know, most of the private schools, the majority of them, they don't really tap into Bahamian folklore fully. So
Mhm.
my goal is to reach as many of them as I can to introduce them to Bahamian folklore, because it's such a rich culture, man.
Yeah, and I like the I mean like the rawness of the dialect, which you were saying. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
So, Mr. Smith tasked us with writing our own folktale,
Mm-hmm.
and he said 2 to 3 pages. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not finished, but my answer's at like 5. I was wondering if you have any tips to like try and cut it down, because once I started writing, like I just went with it, and like I kind of went over the limit by like a lot.
Okay. So think about the theme of your story, right? You want to keep the theme in there. You want to make sure the story sticks to the theme. Think about the meat of your story. Like, you may have probably too much meat in there, you know. Read it over, see what parts of the meat you can use and what parts you can give away, because you don't want to lose your audience with so much of unnecessary dialogue or descriptions. So what you can do is just set a structure. um, so the structure of old stories actually starts with a bunde, like I explained, which is your opening response. You have your formulaic opening, and then you introduce the characters of your story, you know, the situation of their story, the structure of their story. That's like the main meat. Then you go into the motif or the theme of your story. You know, you incorporate a little riddling or a little dialect or slang. You know, I'm sure after that point, you should be getting to like the climax or the peak of your story. And then you would want to cut it off there. So I hope that was helpful for you.
All right, thank you.
I would imagine that Dr. Smith wouldn't be very upset if people went over the page limit and what they went over and it was interesting, right?
Okay.
I think that Dr. Smith probably gets annoyed when he has to read more filler. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
so if the story goes over, but the story is engaging and compelling, and the information that's within the story is necessary to get the point across or to create the sort of vibe that the storyteller is trying to get across. If everything in the story is necessary, then it's fine. If it comes together well, then it's fine. However, I would agree with Princess that, you know, you may want to still read it over and think about what is necessary in order for you to get your point across. So if we agree that the traditional folktale has a particular message, right? So what is the message and what is necessary in order to get the message across? Ideally, your folktale, your short folktale, shouldn't have more than maybe 2 to 3 characters. There may be some dialogue, but there shouldn't be an overabundance of dialogue. You set up what the issue is. If it's a trickster figure or whatever, you set up the situation, you set up the climax and then the denouement and wrap it up. But again, if what you have is necessary and needed and you can't think of anything that you can cut out, then
What I find too is that stories, people's attention spans for stories, they don't really exceed 7 minutes. Perhaps 10 minutes may be your cutoff point, but they don't exceed 7 to 10 minutes. So make sure that your story doesn't go over that time limit, or else you'll start to lose people's attention span. They tend to get fidgety, they tend to get lost in their head, especially children. When you're writing for children, especially, you want to just keep it short and sweet. And like Dr. Smith said, it shouldn't exceed more than 3 characters, because you want to give some sort of depth to the characters. And if you include a bunch of characters, and the story kind of gets lost, because you would want to know, well, who this character is, what's their backstory.
So let me, unless anyone else has a question, let me ask you, Princess. So what has the response been to you? You said that as far as you are the youngest person who's the youngest griot, right? You consider yourself a griot. Well, a couple of things. Can you talk to us about why you think this role that you've taken is important and significant? What do you think can be done what has the reception been from your peers, older people, younger people? What has the reception been? And is it worth it in terms of, if this is something you choose to do, can you make a living at this? And if you can, awesome. But if you can't really make a living, if you have to do this along with something else, why then is it still important that you do this? And would you encourage, and lastly, would you encourage younger people to engage with this?
Okay. So what has the reception been? The reception has actually been overwhelming. It's been really astounding, something that I didn't know if I quite anticipated in the beginning, but because, believe it or not, a lot of people love Bahamian culture and they love Bahamian folklore. They may not engage with it as much as they would like to on a consistent basis, but hearing it from somebody, especially the older generation, it brings sort of a nostalgia to them. And so, of course, that would have been the audience that would have gravitated towards me first, the older generation. Oh, this young gal telling stories. And so, I felt quite elated in that. And the reception has been good, because I see us as undergoing some sort of cultural creative renaissance. So for a while, a lot of things were kind of like on pause and put to a back burner. And then, you know, things started getting a revival. And so with the younger generation now, for some of them, it reminds them of them growing up and experiencing some sort of nostalgia, either with their Grammys or their aunties. And then you have others they're just so entranced by the whole dynamic of all of these things coming together. They want to know more of it. So the reception has been quite good. I've been able to share my storytelling on several different platforms here locally. At the Blue Flamingo Literary Festival, I've been invited to different schools to participate in the classroom, out the classroom, at assemblies, and I actually had an after school program going at St. John's for a while. Damn you, COVID. And then I started a Saturday reading at a Gypsy Books and Teas on Parliament Street. Damn you, COVID again, because they have closed down. And it was a way to bring children together to, to teach them about this culture that they have no idea of. So the reception has been really good. And why I feel it was important for me to carry on this legacy, because I saw a huge part of our culture dying, especially with the storytelling. We all know that we are a hybrid culture. We want to be like the Americans. We want to be like the Europeans. We want to be like the Jamaicans, but we don't want to tap into our own culture. And so I don't know, I see it as some sort of sacred calling that I was given to keep this aspect of our culture alive, the storytelling, talking in dialect, fire dancing, drumming, all of the things that really kept our communities stronger back then, because back then, families had more of a solid structure. This is something that families did. You would gather around a chair and you would sit around in a circle and you would learn stories. And these stories were not only for entertainment, but they taught real life wisdom. They taught you how to navigate through a particular thing that you were going through in your life, and we don't really have that today. We've been so distracted with TV and now social media, and the lessons that we are learning to navigate through this Bahamian experience, they don't necessarily come from a Bahamian lens or a Bahamian perspective. And so sometimes we find it hard to kind of like um, to put that lesson into our Bahamian scope. And so I, not only being passionate about it, but I wanted to use it as a guideline to help the mental health situation in our country, you know? Can I make a living from being a storyteller? Yes and no. The truth is, I can make a living from being a storyteller, taking my talents elsewhere, exposing Bahamian culture to the world. But here in the Bahamas, I can't, unfortunately. Um, I have other or several streams of income, because I can make it on my own as a storyteller, but I would absolutely love to. I would actually love to be able to go into different schools, on a rotating schedule. One day I have St. John's, one day I have St. Anne's, one day I have Princeville, and have a storytelling segment, whether it's during school hours or after school, as well as start my own storytelling program on either TV or social media and somehow create income that way. And what I encourage younger people to carry on this tradition, of course, definitely, especially if they're passionate about it, I'm a firm believer in listening to the call of your passions, that which sets your soul on fire, not blow you up, but give you a nice warm fire. So I would definitely encourage young people, especially so that this aspect of our culture can remain alive and actually be documented. Because in coming into storytelling and trying to do my research, it was so hard to find documented Bahamian stories. I'm grateful for Patricia Glinton Makelis, who took it upon herself to document stories, and Telsine Turner. But other than that, what I found was a lot of outsiders coming in, documenting our stories and taking them back. Because of what a lot of what I have learned and taught myself has actually come from old American anthropologists coming here to study Bahamian folk tales, and I have to go back and study their work, you know. So a part of my life's work is to perhaps create a big textbook on Bahamian literature and Bahamian stories, and of course create my own book of folk tales, including the story in which I just read to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Any other questions for Princess? While they think of their questions, Princess, I know that you say that you're a drummer as well. Would you happen to have a drum nearby?
I do happen to have a drum. You want to hear some
Well,
drumming?
what a coincidence. Why not?
Let me catch my drum.
All right. And so for the class, I hope that you are paying attention to I noticed someone said that they like her energy and whatnot. And so I hadn't told you this yet, but a part of your grade for the paper that you are writing, your folktale, is, of course, you have to read your folktale.
Oh, we do?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay then.
And so as we're reading, as we read in Patricia Glinton McColdis's piece, you know, in terms of an important part of this is the storyteller, because, and we talked about this a few times, in that, you know, reading a folktale is very different than hearing it. And so an important aspect of understanding the Bahamian oral tradition, again, oral is in the title, right? And so of course we need to engage, we need to speak it, we need to engage with it. So we are going to write it and we are going to tell it as well. And again, if there's music, you want to use your voice, you want to use your expressions and so on and so forth. So I think that I'm glad that you all paid attention to Princess's delivery and her energy, because that is exactly what I want you guys to bring when you are telling your folk tales as well.
Yes, that's important. We not only speak with our mouths, that's Bahamians, but we speak with our whole body. Body language is imperative in Bahamian storytelling.
Yes.
So you ready for the drumming now, Dr. Smith?
Yes, yes, please.
All right, so I'll do a little something good for you. I'll start off with an old Junkanoo rhythm and just bring it up.
Something happened to your mic.
Something happened to my mic?
Yeah.
Oh no, you know what?
There you go.
You heard that just now?
Yes, I heard that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think Zoom doesn't allow for musical instruments, because I remember when Ubuntu tried to do a live Zoom drumming, we had technical difficulties, but
Well, maybe what it is, what we'll do, we'll get everyone, make sure everyone turns off their mic, because what happens when people's mics are open up, there's too much crossing and interfering. So everyone else, just mute your mics until the drum.
Okay.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And so, do you ever include? Because I know you do a lot of things. You do the fire dance. You drum. You do your poetry and you do your storytelling. Do you have you considered like, or have you done a show where you incorporate all those parts, all those things as a part of an overall folk tale? Like, is there a folk tale where you include the drumming and the dancing as a part of
Well,
not separate acts, but as a part of,
as
like,
a
you
part
bring
of,
all those elements and create one tale?
I would love to actually. That is on my agenda to do,
Mhm.
to have a storytelling performance where I am fire dancing, I'm drumming, and I'm telling the story. Usually my storytelling goes with the drumming. I didn't have my drummer here today to accompany me,
Right.
but um, I try to do all of my stories with the drumming because that's the whole magic of my storytelling, the
Mhm.
beat of the drum.
Mhm. Yeah. Low key, I was expecting a surprise. I was expecting to for Lil Drummond to be on the side. So I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
that
you know?
that wasn't available today. No.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Anyone else? Any other questions? Any other questions for Princess? If there are no other questions, Princess, I don't know if maybe you had another story you wanted to share with us, or any final thoughts that you want to leave with us. Just to, again, just so you know, these are many freshmen. This is a 108 Bahamian Oral Traditions class. And for some of the students here, they have no experience at all with Bahamian folk tales, with the oral tradition. There are some who have a lot of experience in that. So we run the gamut, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Some of them are here in Nassau, some in Grand Bahama, some in other family islands as well. And of course, the experience in those islands are somewhat different than the experience here as well. Um, and so, yeah, so what I'm trying to do, one of the things that I want to do with this class is to expose the students to people like yourself and others who are engaging in oral tradition in different sort of ways, right? We had Travolta and Bodine. Bodine, of course, does it in her singing and her music.
Mhm.
Travolta is engaging it in his film and television shows. You're doing it in your poetry and other live performances as well. And that's the folk tale and folk traditions. And we have someone else coming in who they're collecting oral histories, right? Narratives, people's stories, and stuff like that. So you have the folk tale, but you have the history as well.
Okay.
So again, I'm just wondering, yeah, what if you have a final story for us, or a final thought in terms of encouraging the young people to take up this mantle that you're carrying at this point? Because I really don't know any younger, or was it you? Did you say that you had someone who was a younger person who was working with you, an
I
apprentice
had
or something?
two of my students from the St. John's program. They were they were interested in storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
and I had them complete. I think it was this same story. I sent them like the beginning part of the story,
Mm-hmm.
and I had them complete their own version of it. Unfortunately, I never got to read those stories because it was right around the same time as when COVID started.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually look forward to reading them, but I would like to encourage everybody to take Bahamian oral culture more seriously than they do if they don't, um, because we actually have the richest folklore culture in the entire Caribbean. A lot of people don't know that. When we came over here during the transatlantic slave trade, we brought all of those stories with us. And of course, we created our own stories, and we had people come from all over the world to hear our stories. Our stories have influenced the Uncle Remus stories of the South. Our stories have influenced the Tar Baby stories from Disney. Like, our culture is very influential, and what I would like to see the up and coming generation do is not only preserve this rich legacy in the aspect of an oral tradition, but putting it on the big screen. I mean, we love watching Wakanda and all these other Greek mythological shows and everything. Like, we have a rich mythology here. I mean, shoot, the Bahamas is home of the Lusca. And that's one of the most revered folk creatures ever. I would love to see some of our stories make the big screen in form of, big blockbuster Hollywood movies. And
Now,
I think a lot of the students,
just between us,
uh-huh.
and if anyone teeth my idea, I know who in this group, but I have this idea of the Garland Bride as a horror, as a horror
Yes,
film. Right.
yes. Like
We
a
could, we,
Rosemary's Baby kind of thing,
we could see,
We
we could
have
see how
so
to,
many stories that we could put onto the big screen that could even, show more of our all of the rich history and legacy that we have here. This one says, what is a lusca? Is it the squid shark thing? Yes, it is. And if you go on YouTube and look up lusca, you would see all kind of Americans doing videos on lusca talking about Andres, but you hardly see any Bahamians talking about it. And if you ask a Bahamian who's lusca, they don't know, you know? So I'm looking forward to seeing the next generation just take our oral traditions to a whole next level, on screen and off screen.
Miss Princess,
Yeah.
is Princess your birth name, or is it a name that you acquired, like from storytelling?
No, Princess is actually my birth name.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then I like your attire, your hair attire.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you.
you dress like
I'm a
that,
hair.
just like for storytelling, or
Well, I tell stories many ways, and one of those ways is telling stories through my hair. I'm my own hairstylist,
okay.
and yeah,
It
I
really
just
complements the story,
thank
the
you very much.
storytelling.
Thank you
It
very much.
does.
Okay.
and I
So
think,
y'all want to have one last story before I go?
Yes, please.
Yes,
yes,
please.
yes,
I can,
yes, one more.
let me see if I can find one now.
And while you search for that, again, one of the things I want to point out too is, when you're invested in your culture in a particular way, you kind of wear it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so it also comes out in the way you dress and the way you carry yourself and so on. And so I think what you all notice in Princess, in terms of her look, her dress, her energy, that's all the energy of the griot, right? That's all the energy. You have to have a particular type of personality in order to get people to listen to you, in order to get people to rein people in. And so I think that's what you're noticing as well in terms of, like she said, the way you look also tells a story.
Mhm. So this last story that I'm going to share, I actually wrote this for the King of the Conch Festival. I wanted to write a story teaching the younger generations about the importance of conch and the preservation of conch because I don't know how many people know the history of conch, but conch plays a huge role in our culture, from us eating so much conch back then because it was a good source of protein and because it was easily available, to the language we speak being called concockney, to the Bahamian white people being called conchs back then, now conky joes. Like, conch plays a big role in our culture, and now we're being threatened with losing one of our most precious commodities due to the over conking of conch. And so I wrote this story to just kind of be like an educational story on conch for younger children to know the importance of conch and to ensure its preservation. So here goes. Once upon a time was a good old time where the monkey chewed tobacco and he spit white lime. Deep at the bottom of the turquoise, aquamarine, and navy blue sea lived a young queen by the name of Conchame on the sandy seafloor. Now, Conchame wasn't your regular queen. She was the majestic queen conch, a large edible sea snail from a family of mollusks known as Strombus gigas. Before Conchame became the regal queen that she was, she started off as a tiny egg on a jelly-like string arranged in a crescent-shaped pile called an egg mass, with almost 500,000 other tiny conch eggs who would camouflage themselves in the sand. After a few days of spawning, she hatched and became a velager, surviving off tiny plants that would swim by. As she grew, she developed 4 lobes, then 6, covered in tiny hairs, becoming the size of a grain of sand. By beating her hairs, she would attract plants to eat. When she turned 4, she became fully mature, already having designed her own pearly pink shell to live in, forming up to 11 whorls or spirals, 2 long, stalky eyes, and a big flared outer lip that looks like a dance. Conker loved dancing her way slowly throughout the great big ocean floor, getting into adventures of all kinds, especially with her friend Queenie May, particularly playing hide and go seek from all of the octopuses that wished to eat them. And they loved to follow the rays of golden sunlight whenever the sun shone and glistened over the water, sending light down to the ocean floor. However, little did Conker know the day would soon come where they would have to play hide and go seek from the humans that dove for conch to be taken out of the ocean for all sorts of uses and consumption. Conker Queenie May, when you think George and Lucinda them coming back home? They been gone long and ain't nobody know when they gone. I ain't think they coming back, says Queenie May. I think they get eat. I heard other conchs them talking to Sip Sip about this new sea creature what been coming in and out the sea and taking us out. New sea creature? Exclaimed Konkame. What you mean, new sea creature? And what you mean coming in and out of the sea? Everything live in the sea don't come out. So Queenie may say that's what I hear. It's a little funny to me too, but I know Konkame. Too much us been going missing. And the octopus them ain't been around our parts in a while. Just as Konkame and Queenie Way were about to make their way past a coral reef, they heard like what sounded like a big boom come in the water. They looked up and saw a human swimming around aimlessly trying to push himself further to the bottom. They quickly tucked themselves into their shells and rolled with waves between a thick bed of seaweed, trying to hide themselves. The human, now losing breath, realized that there was no conch to be found on the ocean floor, when one time ago there would be conch everywhere, and at a depth that caused him not to have to dive so much deeper. This human wasn't a regular human. He was a conch diver from a generation of conch divers that made their living by harvesting and selling conch. They didn't know that conch played a major role in the marine food web, and overconching could lead to a rapid negative impact on the marine resources in the region's ocean. All they knew was that conch was food that could be prepared in a number of different ways. Back on the land, they fried them in a batter-like substance to make conch fritters and crack conch, boiled them down in a broth-style soup to make conch chowder, and their absolute favorite conch salad, which required no cooking and little preparation, pairing them with vegetables, garnet conch. They also served use the conch shell and its beautiful interior construction and to make one-of-a-kind jewelry pieces. Even a one-of-a-kind horn known as the conch horn, which they blew in to make music or to send warning signals. As the diver began to make his way up into the golden sunlight, Conker May and Queenie May stood between the weeds, paralyzed with fear. They had finally seen this new monster coming in and out of the sea. Above them on the surface of the water in a little dinghy boat, the diver made his way back to the shore. There he was met by a group of locals all lined up waiting to purchase their conch. To their dismay, not a single conch was caught. "What you mean you ain't get no conch? What you do? Shark scared you out, eh?" said one rowdy woman. "But what I saying is I've been telling y'all the conch look like they getting scarce. For the past couple times I've been going down there, I could hardly find one and I only been bringing back a couple. Now this time I bring back none. Come like they either burn themselves deeper or something, and I's be running out of breath trying to dive deep looking for that man." "You ain't lying, son," said an elderly diver who was amongst the crowd. "A long time ago, way back when my granddaddy first teach me to trade, he would tell me we could eat the conch, but we had to eat it in moderation. He did say the conch move across the seagrass and it would clean something called the algae from it, because if the seagrass get too much algae, it could start to choke and kill the seagrass, because it ain't getting enough sunlight. Why you think our beach look like this now, boy? Because we've been taking more and more conch out the water and they ain't getting to do their part in the ecosystem." Beneath the ocean, Conker May and Queenie May were still scared stiff between the seaweed when they felt something move. It was an elder queen conch whose shell over time had become so thick, worn, and covered with seaweed. "My lily queen, you don't want to move your shell off of my lippy." Queenie May didn't realize her shell was almost piercing the huge, thick, flared lip of the elder queen conch. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't even realize you was one of us. I just thought this whole thing was seaweed." "My lily queen, I done been here about 30 years, gal. I done see plenty conch born and gone just like that." "What that thing was?" asked Conker May. "I never seen nothing like that down here before." "They's humans," the queen conch said, "and they just take us to eat us like fish and do all kind of other things with we." Back on the surface, the diver, after hearing the wisdom of his elder and realizing that what he said made perfect sense, since his own livelihood was beginning to take a turn for the worse, decided that he would declare a conservation. "Now listen, this what we gotta do. We gotta give these conch them some time to breathe and mature properly. We gotta implement a season like grouper, and when the season ends, we can't be greedy and take all. We gotta leave some, especially the young ones, and keep a balance to ensure we preserve our beaches too, because that can help preserve us, you know. We could also look to start conch farming to help repopulate the conch in the ocean." The islanders got into a heated row for all about an hour or so, until finally they came to a healthy compromise, raising awareness and educating everyone on the importance of conservation and conch farming. And Conker May and Queenie May lived as long as the elder queen conch, who had helped to spare their lives by educating them about the humans. And Conker May and Queenie May had millions and millions of little conch babies. Ban Boban, my conch story has now come to an end.
Awesome. Thank you, Princess. And so I think what your two stories showed us too is that you know you can use the folktale in terms of the the moral aspect, but you can
Or you
also
can
use it in
use it
terms of teaching, as a
as
teaching
an
tool.
educational tool.
Yeah,
Mhm,
exactly. And so I think that that's awesome.
mhm.
And it's actually something that for the students, I think it's important for them to think about. You don't have to become a folklorist. You don't have to become a griot like Princess is, but you can take some of these things. If you're in nursing, if you know folk tales, think about how you can use this as a part of the healing process for your patients, right? Sometimes people are lonely and they just need to hear, they just need someone to keep them company, and you can be in someone's room and tell them a folk tale. If you're a teacher and you want to create an interesting and dynamic class lesson, you can use folk tales in order to do that. And so we can think about how we can incorporate these tales, and regardless of what our major field is, we can always incorporate elements of the folk tale as well. So to that end, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me? Am I coming across clearly? I think there's a bit of a lag.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, great. All right, so guys, let's thank Princess Pratt for spending some time with us today. And
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So much.
Thanks.
So
It
it's a
has been
pleasure,
interesting.
Princess.
Thank you.
Grateful.
Thank
Very
you. It
much.
was awesome.
Thank you.
Princess, is
You're
there
welcome.
anywhere that we can, if we're interested in hearing more from you, or seeing you perform, is there a place that we can go to find that information?
Okay, so I will give you my socials. I'll tell you it as well as I'll type it here in the chat box. So you can find me on Facebook. My Facebook page is Sensually, Spiritually, Culturally Me, as well as The Princess and the Books. I also have a YouTube channel. Y'all, subscribe to me, man. I need some subscribers. I've been on YouTube for a couple of years, just slowly trying to build it. I got about 6 subscribers on there, but I try to post the majority of my work, my storytelling, my poetry on there. And so culturally me. So I'm typing that in here now. Facebook. Essentially, spiritually, culturally me, The Princess and the Books. And then I am on Instagram as Sensual, Spiritual, Cultural Me. Or if you type in Princess Pratt, you should see me come up.
All right. Well, thank you, Princess. I really appreciate you taking the time out and sharing with us and letting us know what you do, and helping us to feel the magic of a live performance of Bahamian folklore. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here and for you helping me to tap back into my magic, because COVID didn't yuck the magic out of everybody.
This is true. This is true.
And it's hard trying to fully come into this virtual realm to offer what it is that you have to offer. Sometimes you feel like the energy isn't there, because as artists, we feed off of that live energy. But this was very good today. So thank you all for giving me this energy virtually.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.